I'm actually going to tell them why I'm recording this too. Is it on? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Dr. Nina Ha, and I am the director of the Apita Plus Center. And we're very fortunate today to collaborate with Moss Arts again. Our first one of the semester. Yeah. Yes. So I'm really excited. And just a shout out, I'm recording this because Dr. Shaila Mera can't be here. So we will be sending this recording to her personally. And John, do you want to take over?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll just echo what Dr. Haas said. It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for making the time to join us for this really special conversation, particularly on fall break. I recognize it's a really important respite in what can otherwise be a pretty hectic semester. So as Nina mentioned, my name's John. I work across the street at the Moss Arts Center, and we have the great privilege this week of welcoming three amazing musicians to town: Shahzad Ismaily, Vijay Iyer, and Aruj Aftab, a member of an ensemble that call themselves Love in Exile, or the project is called Love in Exile. This particular project is being performed here in Blacksburg tonight at 7:30 p.m. at the Moss Arts Center. We would be delighted if you could join us. The music is spellbinding, and I have to say, I was thinking on the way over here, particularly on fall break, during a period where we're sort of invited to pause, rest, unplug, I can think of no better project, given the way this project really invites you to take a moment and try to cultivate as much presence as you can. It's truly transporting. So we're delighted to have you here. I want to thank, of course, Nina. Thank you for having us here. Michelle and Luke, thank you for your help in setting up today. And as always, the opportunity to partner with the Apita Plus Center and their Learning Lunch series is a real honor. We have about an hour for a conversation with Vijay and Shahzad. And I'll share a little bit more about them with you. And then at that point, I would invite you to share a little bit about the Learning Lunch series. We invite folks to describe their personal and professional journey through higher education into the world that they occupy: music, art, literature, what have you. But a little about our guests. So across from me is Vijay Iyer. Mr. Iyer is a composer, pianist, and educator. He presently teaches at Harvard University in both the Department of Music as well as the Department of African and African American Studies. As a composer and pianist, he's been active for over 25 years, and over the course of that rich career, he's received a number of accolades for his work. Some of them include a MacArthur Fellowship, the Doris Duke Performing Artist Award, a U.S. Artist Fellowship, and I'll stop there. Suffice to say, we're honored to have you here in town. Thank you so much for being here. In addition, to my right is Shahzad Ismaily. Shahzad is a multi-instrumentalist. You can also give me the hook if you feel inclined. As a multi-instrumentalist, he's self-taught and has mastered a number of instruments, including electric and double bass, guitar, banjo, drums, as well as a series of percussion instruments. He has played on and produced an astounding number of records, 400 over the past 20 years of his career. I'll do that. Okay, so with that being said, thank you so much for being here. So it's sort of the blush meter, how far do we go? So as I mentioned, to start off at these Learning Lunch talks, we usually just invite the speakers to share a little bit about their personal or professional journey, what those sort of watershed moments were that brought them to where they are today.
I'm trying to think of what a watershed moment would be. One that comes to mind is playing music with non-musicians was definitely a watershed moment for me. In particular with dancers, and in particular a dance form called Buto from Japan. There are different ways in which that had a watershed quality. The first one is how much that particular dance form invites stillness, slowness, obscurity. I mean, as I speak about it now, obscurity is the one that pops out a bit more than the others, in the sense that often when you perform music or maybe even theater, dance, the intention is to be seen. and to be understood. And when I came across that dance form, there was a suggestion that mystery was where it was at. That in fact, it's just as fine to not be seen, to be misunderstood, and to remain unknown in the context of performance and afterwards. That was a watershed moment because prior to that, when you study music among musicians, sometimes things become self-referential. You're meant to really know what chord am I playing, what rhythm am I playing, let me execute it well, let me be proficient. And when you interact with a form outside of your own modality, it starts to reduce that idea of proficiency. And maybe it's more interesting to investigate something else. Okay, I'll pause there. That's the watershed.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very with you on that. And I would say the same, actually. Having had the chance to work with non-musicians, you get a very different perspective on what you think your discipline is. And I've gotten to work with poets, filmmakers, choreographers. And yeah, just trying to meet them where they're at and realize that I learned so much about listening from noticing how they listen, how they talk about what they're experiencing, what I'm offering. So yeah, it's very similar that those different experiences of working with poets.
Just make sure you sign in, please, on the page.
Yeah,
They're gonna need
because I
that.
want the email.
I got it.
Yeah, poets. Say the poet Amiri Baraka, who I got to work with for some years, was really, I came of age studying and trying to master this Black American musical form as a so-called jazz pianist, and then working alongside someone like him, and particularly in that phase of his life where it was sort of, around 20 years ago, so in the decade before he passed away, he had this sort of sensibility about what we could do together as this kind of, both as a sort of retrospective of Black culture, then also a celebration of allyship, of like what it is that we can do together. So moments like that have been very key to me. I guess other watershed moments have sort of preceded that, which were like in the 90s when I was in my 20s, trying to what it was to be South Asian American in public in the 90s is very different from what it is now. I think you can, I'm sure you experienced this too, that no one knew who or what we were or why we were here, and there's certainly like the experience of being marginalized, being kind of seen as different, as not belonging, all of that. But then also like trying to embrace a quintessentially American art form, especially one that demands a sort of like that you show up as yourself. So then it was kind of like, who is that self? Like, what is it? How do you be a person? Like that was really like as existential as that. Let alone how do you be American? Like I don't know. Like how do you be? How do you participate in this the culture that sort of is not really having us, and so making contact in those years with other Asian Americans was so formative for me. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this collective of Asian American music makers on the West Coast, go by the name of Asian Improv Arts. So if you go to asianimprov.org. See a nice history of this organization that's been around for close to 40 years. Co-founded by Fred Ho and John Jang and Francis Wong. And, by the time I showed up, it was kind of a critical mass of stuff they were doing in the Bay Area. And mainly like the idea that you might, as yourself, create music on your terms that is in dialogue with these existing forms, and particularly with Black music, and that is also authentic to something about yourself, whatever that was. And we all go through this phase where we're like, what is our heritage, and what is it to me right now, or how does it sort of make me who and what I am? Do I want to kind of see myself as a carrier or as a voider, as a sort of like, because like part of what that is some kind of hegemonic system that maybe you don't want to be a part of. But certainly, I don't want to be a part of what India is today. That's nothing to me. As a genocidal nation state, I have no interest in being aligned with it. So like, but I have family there. I have, real people like that I have kind of connection to. So, and by the way, I would say the same about the U.S. today. Like, I don't think that nation is the right carrier for identity. Anyway, to have made contact with a community of Asian American creative musicians in that period was really important to me. And then, in particular, to meet another South Asian American at a pivotal moment in my life. Rudresh Mahathapa is his name. We met in the mid-90s when we were both like 23. And we sort of like, as soon as we met, we were like, guess we're in this together. Like it was kind of so obvious to us because we were really the only ones, like the only brown jazz musicians, he plays saxophone, I play piano, and so we started working together constantly. And that was sort of like we got to like work through a lot of things together, and endure a lot of, like you were saying, misreadings and nonsense that was put on us in those years in a way where we could kind of like hold each other through it, So that was really, it's not a moment, but a sort of era for me, I would say. I mean, we still are in constant contact sending each other like inside. We have like 25 years worth of inside jokes at this point. But like we were really active together from say like 95 to maybe 2008. We did a whole bunch of projects together, out like a dozen records together.
Can I ask a question? Follow up. So you were just describing finding community or building community. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about the community you've built as a trio through the Love in Exile project. When reading some interviews with the two of you as well as Aruj, I've learned a little bit about what those moments were, the sparks that you felt that sort of compelled you to come together to want to play in a more regular way. I'd love to know within this trio, recognizing that all three of you are enormously accomplished individually, what have you learned from one another through this project so far?
So much. I mean, that if you're talking about that micro community of those three people, it's being built as we speak. It's being built currently, and even in this room, because I haven't had the privilege of spending much time with Vijay over these past many, many years, and same with Aruj as a very new friend. And so, in addition to playing on stage, anytime we're asked to do an interview, we end up discovering a lot about each other, and it's really beautiful. I mean, we walked in to do a Pitchfork interview, and it was about an hour-long podcast, and that was me getting to know Vijay right in that moment, getting to know Aruj right in that moment. This is quite beautiful. And then, of course, what you end up learning from one another are alternate points of view to your own. As I listened to Vijay speak about what he's mining for in music, then when I go home, I begin to look for the same thing. Or if I'm in the studio shortly after having played together and I'm working with someone a couple days later, I'm looking for some of the things I've heard Vijay speak about, or actual ways in which we've interacted on stage that evening a few nights ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, Shahzad and I've known each other since 1999 or 2000, or when did you?
Yeah, I moved to New York in 2000, so we've been like 2001, 2000,
Yeah.
like very close to the beginning.
And we had a few experiences playing together in this large aggregate, and then sort of we're on like parallel tracks in New York where there was no bleed, not much bleed
Yeah.
between those tracks, so we didn't really get to hear or interact with each other very much. I would hear about a lot of things, but we did. We both stayed busy, I guess that's what it was, and so there was a kind of like beautiful blessing of our convergence 5 years ago that happened in a very specific, certain way, which is not beautiful. But it was more. It wasn't about what happened before as much as what happened after. Which is as soon as, I mean, we played together in public for the first, like we just came together and played in public, and after that, we realized that there was something there that we didn't even know how to articulate. And I've told this story many times, but Shahzad actually like held us, the three of us together. And said, I mean, he said something like, "I'm not sure what just happened, but I do know I'd like to do that again." And we all felt the same exactly. It was like, there are certain things that music does that you work through things that you can't work through any other way, actually. And I have to say, I'm in therapy. I recommend it to everybody. And I was actually just, because like one of the things that's happened to me as an artist in public, and particularly in public in the West as a brown artist, is that there's a lot of doubt cast on me about whether I should be doing what I'm doing, whether I deserve what I have, whether I even should even be considered in the same league as so-called more legitimate artists or something. And it's usually white men saying that. That happens to me so often. It happened to us the other day. So and it's happened to me for like decades. So that's like, one needs therapy after a lot of that, and part of what is like where it hits me is very confessional, you guys. Where it hits me is like,
Don't forget to sign in on that.
where it hits me is that so I actually never had piano lessons. I was self-taught pianist. I had violin lessons for 15 years, like maybe some of you guys have had, which was a good like Asian American thing to do, right? And piano was something I kind of picked up by ear, just banging on it. My sister was taking piano lessons, and so I was like always this kind of transgressive, like mischievous boy on her piano. And so I also had this hang up about like, I don't belong on the piano, and I don't deserve to have what I have because other people are legitimate, are like crafts people on the instrument. And I was like this rank amateur. I actually felt that myself, and yet somehow I had been embraced by all these elder musicians who heard something in me that they believed in, and that's kind of what got me through it all. But I still felt like, as far as the trained musician kind of like dominate the scene today, I felt intimidated. So then when a white critic would sort of, well, basically would just, for other reasons, usually just to do with like white supremacy, would say something about me not belonging, or even a white musician says, that would really get under my skin. Anyway, all of that is to say that the other day I was talking to my therapist, and because like I've talked to her about that for so long, and she's like, "Yeah, we get it." No, but I realized that this group lets me be exactly who I am, and without any pretension of, it's like what you were just saying. It's about without any kind of pretension of accomplishment or achievement or virtuosity on a musicianly scale, because it connects to something much more fundamental and human about all of this. And I realized that not only do I have that to offer, but everybody does, and that is valid and beautiful. So that's one thing I've learned, to make a long story long.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I wonder about how you draw people into, as you put it at the very beginning, be their full selves, you know, because I think about that outside of music as well, right? You know, folks, I'm sure there's some folks in the room who are musicians, but also folks studying all kinds of different things. And I wonder what advice you might offer for people perhaps even outside of music about how they create spaces of collaboration where people feel like they can show up as their full selves.
I guess what comes to mind is to try to do it around friends. And then as that feels more and more comfortable, you do it around strangers. In the sense that in music and in the community of music, you travel through many, many folks, and then you find people that feel right to you. You find people you have chemistry with. And in that room, in that context, you feel very comfortable being yourself. And then as you do it enough with those 3, 4, 5, 10 people, then you walk into a room that is a room of strangers, and you have the capacity to do it. So I suppose in the moments when you're around someone that you feel comfortable with, whether it's your lover, your partner, your friends, your parents, your children, you take a moment to go the extra step to be more yourself, given that that's a space of comfort. And that builds that muscle to do it elsewhere.
Do you think you have an agenda, but I would love to just
Oh,
hear a little
absolutely.
bit.
I'd rather that.
Do you mind if going around the room and saying a sentence or two about yourselves?
You want me to start?
Sure.
My name is Kamran. I'm originally from Pakistan. I work at the College of Natural Resources and Environment. I'm not a musician, I'm a biologist. I used to work with fish, now I work with people. I just a little bit more inclusive, so it's been an interesting change.
Shahzad. I grew up here in Virginia as well. I also don't know much about music or instruments. The only instrument I'm familiar with is the computer keyboard. Yeah, listen.
Hey everyone, I'm Sarthak Deshmukh. I'm a second year aerospace master student. By the way, I'm attending the event in the evening.
Good.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, I wanted to see the Moss Art Center, how it is, and yeah, it's good to see that the students are just charged $10 for the ticket, and they get a huge discount. That basically says that students are like, they want students to be a part of this all events. Yeah, and I'm really looking up to it to see the musical performance. I always wanted to learn piano, but for some reason I didn't have the perseverance or the ability to stay at one place and learn something. Apart from my studies, which I do by sitting, I wanted to just go outside and play something, like freshen up my mind, not just sit in a room. And so that was one of the reasons that I didn't go into the music. But I love to hear performances. I love to know more about artists.
I have a question for you. Did you already buy your ticket? Because
Yeah.
okay, I was gonna say they have free rush tickets. That's like a thing on campus, or you can get text and then it's for the future.
Yeah, like considering the amount of South Asian people over here, I thought the tickets are gonna be sold out. Maybe due to the I mean, I didn't take any chance, I just put it. Yeah, I've seen that happening and don't wanna regret it. That's it. Yeah, thanks for letting me know. Yeah.
You always gotta, share free resources.
Oh, yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Gia. I am a graduate student studying civil engineering as well as urban affairs and planning. I really love the APITA community that we have here. And even though I'm not a musician, I'm really passionate about broadening participation in like everything. And I love hearing about your stories of how you bring your identity into music. And I'm curious how you've seen diversity change just even in your lifetime with music. And, like, do you see young people going through the same struggles, or is it like just a different flavor, or is it more inclusive, or is it the same?
We'll remember that.
My name is Kristen. I'm a second year PhD student here at physics Tech. I was originally from Hawaii, so the cultural shift from being born in Hawaii and raised there to coming to the East Coast, I went to seeing similar faces everywhere to being all parts of my community in the East Coast. So it was a very shocking cultural shock. But I made it. I was already supposed to learn how to play piano by my family, but then it was decided that academia should be my stronger focus. So here I am, suffering through physics.
What kind of?
I'm doing astrophysics.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Steph. I'm a PhD student in agricultural leadership and community education. I've always liked music. I hope you're doing okay.
I'm just burning my throat for today.
Oh,
It's not,
no.
I tested, it's not good.
That's good. I hope you feel better. Well, I think it's never too late to start playing music because I just had my birthday and I bought myself a bass guitar and I'm trying to just self-teach and it's been really fun. I actually hurt my hand from playing too much. Yeah, so, yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Swatika and basically I have moved on here right now in the fall. I started my computer engineering degree and master's this year itself, and apart from that, music has always fascinated me. I had been playing piano since my childhood. I was first introduced to this when my father went to Dubai. He bought me a keyboard from there, and after that he engaged me with a teacher, and I started playing piano from the age of 5.
Great.
So yeah, so I do play piano, and after that my fascination moves towards the guitar things. So I just bought one guitar to me during my 20th birthday, and I started building my own skills with it,
Wow, great.
self-learning it. So yeah, that's it.
Oh, Brian, I don't play that music instrument, so PhD student in the College of Engineering. Yeah, I enjoyed the talk, so look forward to the performance tonight.
Want to say anything?
Sure, hi. We worked together around Robin Holcomb many years ago.
I can't even remember who Robert Holcomb, who's Robert Holcomb?
Robin.
Oh, Robin, well, that sounds so much familiar.
Yeah, we'll talk later. Her performances at the Moss Center, and it's a really huge honor to have these three artists here tonight. And I'm also a musician. I played violin, mostly stills and piano. So great to be here.
Should we get this
Yeah,
situation
let's get
going?
started here. Hey.
Okay. Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm a second year PhD student in engineering education, and a lot of my research focuses on bringing a cultural identity into the engineering space.
Wow.
So it's been a while, but back in undergrad, I was a intern for Ernie Ball Music Man, which is a guitar-based company out of San Luis Obispo, California. And I think one of the ways that when I was working there, they actually have a large Filipino population, and they actually do a lot of the string work and the woodwork. So that kind of was one of the ways that I was seeing how culture, like, all these different identities were coming together. So I'm really excited to hear about that.
I'm Luke. I'm a third year undergrad, or in my undergraduate degree. I'm a biology major and philosophy minor. I took piano lessons during elementary school, and then I played trumpet in the school band between 7th grade and my senior year of high school. And my brother got really into guitar, and he left an electric guitar at my parents' house and then said I could have it. And so I have unsuccessfully tried to teach myself guitar. Might try again one day, but for now, just gonna be bad at it.
There's a guitar club here. You're going.
Hi, I'm Farouk. I'm a second year aerospace master's student. I was born and raised in Virginia, but my parents are from Pakistan. I am inept at guitar. I have recently done a little bit of acting and poetry, and I'm trying to I'm very interested in what you guys are saying, because I'm trying to see like what places art have in my life. What are things that I want to say with it, and how do you see the world differently when you have that connection, right? So what you said about how you realized at some point that you didn't need to be seen, you could veil messages, like I was really interested in that. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to hearing about your guys' experience and the intersection between culture and your art.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashish. I'm a first year master's computer science student. I work for Moss as a photographer. I hope it's evident. And I think I'm a rookie guitarist, like just played like when I feel. Back in India, I used to be a music photographer. I used to work in music concerts, few artists. So I think that's how I'm like deeply connected to music.
Great.
There are also people online. If you want to, please feel free to share as well, just who you are. And
Especially if you're a rookie guitarist. Be the running feed. Should have an Asian American rookie guitarist.
anyone online want to share? You don't have to if you don't want to. I wanted to give you the opportunity.
Can you guys hear me? Hi, I'm Gabe. I'm a very rookie guitarist. I played for about 3 months back in high school.
Awesome.
Broke it. So I haven't really played much since. However, I am still learning about that more online, just saving up for a guitar for myself that I can keep in my dorm room.
Thank you, Gabe. Laura, did you want to share? Oh, okay, maybe not. Henry? Henry? Maybe not.
He's unmuted, but we cannot hear him.
We can't hear you, Henry.
Perhaps you could chime in.
Yeah, can you maybe introduce yourself in chat, Henry? Thank you. There's also food, by the way. I don't want to make you starve, so feel free to come by and eat too. Because I know a few of you, they come very, so our.
Gia, was it? What's your name? Gia?
That question?
Was your name Gia?
Gia.
Gia, okay. Could you had a question, you had a specific question which now has washed away from my old period.
I'm really interested to see how you've seen the music industry change just in your time span in the music industry. Has participation broadened? Has it become more diverse, or do you think it's more of the same?
I don't know, how do you answer that?
Well, I could speak to two trends that I'm noticing. One is that music technology has become cheaper and easy to get. So that has contributed to the people that make music being significantly more diverse. Anyone can pick up like a small recording object or a laptop or guitar and start to make some records and put them online. So, and then similar to what we're seeing in larger society, there's a push away from just white men occupying a space, like the space of the recording studio or the space of the music business. So there's one trend towards increasing diversity. But then there's a secondary trend, which is as musicians don't get paid for their work, then the people that make music are the people that have surplus income. So we see a trend towards upper middle class humans making music and making records. And I think, and I wonder how much more extreme that's just about to get. And so that's kind of a funny duality that's happening.
Yeah.
One of the things that I struggle with a lot is like how like getting through being bad at something. So I guess like when you're learning an instrument, how do you get past that initial block of being bad at it mentally?
Maybe well, I've been there. And the main thing is not so much like, am I great or am I excellent or like pursuing individual excellence. I think like the core element of music making is that it's something we do together. And so actually, through collaboration, you grow in all these other ways that aren't about like, oh my God, I can believe in everything. I'm all over the guitar. It's not about that. It's about like, can you synchronize with someone? Can you harmonize with, or like, can you hear what they're playing and relate to it? That basic skill, or not even skill, but just sort of like human birthright, it's such a fundamental thing about us, as that's sort of like the core of music making, and that's sort of where it comes to life. I teach, as it was mentioned, at Harvard, where students are so used to being incredible at things. As soon as they encounter a moment when they're not incredible at something, they think they should just abandon that thing, So it's sort of like this, they get this like weird, not weird, it's very common actually. This, it backfires and they're like, start to get really down on themselves and imposter syndrome, like that kind of thing. But what I find as a teacher who like brings, like especially when I'm doing music making classes, it's sort of like you want to give people the gift of each other. Like, you know what? See what you can do together. I'll give you 4 weeks to figure that out. And then in the meantime, like while you're working on it, we'll work on it together. That kind of thing. And it's not about individual achievement at all.
And for some reason, I feel like being extremely harsh. So my two instinctive answers, both of which are very harsh, are number one, the way to get past those moments when you're not good at something and it's difficult at the beginning is to continue to move towards the things that you love to do, that you want to do. Otherwise, you're not going to do them. So it feels like the pull beyond the initial obstacles of playing guitar, playing music, playing in a band, that pull is going to have to be how much you enjoy it, how much you want to do it. So continually in your life, whether it's guitar or whether guitar gets abandoned and it's something else, to move towards the things that you love, because that will be the engine that allows you to cross over some of the darkest spaces in your pursuit of something. And then the second thing I wanted to say, equally harsh, is whatever you think you can do is what you're going to be able to do. It's so unbelievably factual and non-metaphysical. If you wake up in the morning and you think, I can't play guitar, that is it, you're done. The whole story is finished. So it's very much a one-to-one relationship in that.
Can I ask something that kind of continues on from what you're saying? Because you guys have been talking a lot about like, your journeys, your transitions, and these things you've that have helped shape you over time, right? How is what you've said with your art, like how is what you have wanted to show people with your art, or even say to yourself with it, changed over that time? And I'm talking like long term, like, because I mean, the early 2000s were a tough time, I'm sure. And then like even now, like within the past couple of years, we've been working together.
I think there was an early phase for me of just trying to prove that I could do anything, like to, not to myself, but to anyone who might listen or who might give me a shot at something. And that was a slow climb, I would say. From mid-90s to probably like 2009 or something like that. Took a while, banging my head against various walls and doors and tables. And other heads. And then like suddenly I it was not the big time. Let's be real. But it was like suddenly I was able to move as myself in the sort of to circulate in the music business, let's say, which is not the same as the music world. So that distinction is kind of important. To like have opportunities that I could then, and through those opportunities, then like actually getting better in a different way, which was like learning more about how music works in action in the world with audiences, with each other, like just what we learned by being on the road, you know, which is not something you learn by struggling individually on something. It's just a very different kind of experiential knowledge. So then that, I think like I developed a sort of intuition around that, around like, not just how music works, but what I like and what I have to offer. That then helped me make some larger choices about like how and what and when and where and with whom do I want to do that, and also to be able to sort of see it from the outside of it, meaning like to bear witness to what it's doing. You know, I always tell students, I mean, it happens at every level. I always tell students like, whenever you're playing, some part of you has to not be playing, than just witnessing what is happening. Because we can get really caught up in like, oh, I don't know how to do this, or I hope I'm amazing right now, or something like that. And just to be able to sort of, some part of you step away from that and kind of observe it as if it's not you, you know. Because that part of you is also, that connects to maybe someone else in the room who's also not you, you know. And then you get to kind of hear it as someone else might. So I think that kind of wisdom that's like a lifelong cultivation, I would say, of like, what actually does this sound like, you know? And then also some kind of like, I think there's a way that we like tend to imagine music as separate from everything around it. We talk about cultural context or something, as if that's not already there in that moment, not until you put it there, until you acknowledge it or something. So I think a greater understanding of the interdependence of all those things has sort of like helped me make choices that I can stand behind.
it kind of sounds like, you started with yourself, you're like, I need to make sure I look good to other people, and it just became about everything around it.
Yeah, it became less about me.
Yeah.
I guess that's what it's.
Awesome.
I'm curious, like, are you guys like first generation or like, and I'm just curious how your family cultures might play a role because, especially being like Asian, you know, there's some kind of pressure a lot of times to follow certain paths, and I'm wondering like, did you have to reconcile with anything? Like, I definitely had to with my parents. They were not pleased with me with my path, but they're
Two
better
science
now.
majors, two science majors.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm curious. About, like,
So here's how it goes. My dad is in Pakistan in Karachi, and his dad loved him a lot by the accident of my dad being physically ill when he was a kid. So he became sort of a cherished child in a way. And so the story was that my grandfather, my dad's dad, who had a little shop where he would hand make jewelry. So he would lay out like a big piece of cloth on the ground, get into this little hovel space, and have a melted pot of silver, a melted pot of gold, and some tongs, and then just make jewelry all day and lay it out. It would cool down.
Where is this?
This was probably in Multan, like in lowlands part of Pakistan. And so then he would pack the whole thing up around lunchtime and then walk about a mile to watch my dad at recess. And then when recess was over, walk back, unpack and set the shop up. So my dad grew up with the sort of smothering, suffering kind of love that is a part of our culture. And the first time I ever read something that was written about it really well was this recent biography about Lou Reed. And he grew up in a Jewish household, and there's a similarity to the smothering. And I wish I had it in front of me to read to you, but the paragraph was about how it actually has a negative side to it. How it's love with pain, love with expectation, love with death of the self, the true self. And so then my dad comes over here. This is great. He's randomly doing these math exams that are just that are a rudimentary part of the education system there. And then on one of them, he gets extremely high marks. Family's really excited. And then he gets entrances to some exams at some schools in the States. One of them is MIT, the other one is University of Minnesota. Nobody over there knows the difference except that one is cheaper. So like, okay, great, you're going to Minnesota. I mean, unbelievable what life would have been like. So he comes over here on a plane. This is late 60s. Comes over here on a plane with an image that I feel like I can hold in an imagined way of one suit, which is the one he's wearing, and then his civil engineering textbook in a kerchief with a knot on the top on the plane coming straight to Minnesota. And the couple things I've heard him say about it, were about how hellish it was in terms of the cold and the cultural difference and the snow and just the absurdity of the whole thing. So he lands like that. My mom, on the other hand, grows up in the mountains of Pakistan, and she hops into one of the only 6 seats for women to go to medical school at that time. And she has a very open to the world kind of disposition, up for engaging with everybody. So after college, she lands into a residency in London. And she's having a great time. She's like figuring out the subway system and figuring out just random places to sleep and just enjoying it. And meanwhile, my dad is quite reserved and doesn't really reach out to people so easily. They had an arranged marriage. And he's telling his family, look, what is the deal? Like, she's not coming over. And I'm writing her, and she's still not coming over. We're married. And she's over in London having a great time. So then the extended family starts going to visit my mom and says, look, you're married. I don't know what you're doing. You're gonna have to go over there now. Then she lands in the States. Now, this is all to say the accident of their beginnings here were to be in small towns, which was just so stupid. Because it meant that there was nobody to connect with. And only if you were ready to cross the divide, the cultural divide towards the deep other, you would just be solitary. And so then we had a very solitary upbringing. So this is me, my mom, and my dad, and silence. Then that amplified how much their expectations were for me to not be a musician and anything but. So as I grow up and I'm starting here, first generation, and I'm somehow so into being a musician, that is it, that's all I want to do. Every single day from 0 until 31, when my dad passed away, was my dad telling me this is the wrong thing to do. And up until 31, I still hadn't broken towards any kind of well-actualized space. So my dad was coming to see me play in a sports bar where at more than half of the people were watching the television, and where I got $8 at the end of the show. So his understanding of that choice was just like, this is a nightmare of what is happening. My mom, on the other hand, is still alive. And so she's since gone to a 5-star hotel in England where I'm playing with Yoko Ono and, you know, all kinds of things. So she's understanding, but it was an intense struggle to choose that path. And the one extremely positive outcome of that is that in fighting for it, I was perpetually reasserting my resolve to do it and to love doing it. And so there's no obstacle that comes that's not crossable at this point because of that. And the secondary thing is, having had parents that weren't going to set up a music lesson or find a supported path in that way, it meant that I had to find it for myself. And so having a voice on an instrument came extremely easy for me because I was making it happen. And I know so many contemporary friends and musicians for whom that's the struggle. They're like, well, you know, my parents were like, yeah, totally, go to Carnegie, go study, go to Juilliard, whatever. And now at my age or younger, they're saying like, how do I get my own voice on this instrument? And that mine was there from the beginning. And so there were some really positive things about it. The last thing I'll say is that my story, as I've told it up until now, has always been that my parents weren't supportive, right? I need to start changing that completely because I understand intensely that financial support is support, particularly for musicians and artists. And the fact that my parents, I consistently had a place to live, I consistently had food, I consistently could go buy an instrument if I needed to. They caused my life to unfold the way it did. Yeah. So in that way, they were surprisingly like a huge support. Yeah.
Right. I hope you transcribe this because this is gold right here.
I have it on video.
That's right. This is for you, Shyla. This is all for you.
Yeah, going in the vault. And I have to say also, well, I mean, I can narrate my version of this. But I will also say that the moment I became a parent, maybe you experienced this too. Like literally when my daughter drew the first breath, my first thought was, I need to apologize to my parents. Oh my God. I see it now. Like I feel the entire existential journey and the sort of the blessed commitment of that, you know, like what they did to let us be anything, you know, to help us become anything, you know, and how, and especially as immigrants here and as immigrants who or surveilled and misunderstood and doubted, and, you know, to then like watch their child be an artist, like we didn't come here for this. Like what is this? But then like, so the thing about it, which I also realized, I came to realize in a much deeper way a couple of years ago. My father passed away just a couple of years ago, and I realized I always knew he had an ear for music, and he was actually, as like, in terms of doing music, he loved it. He was really supportive of it. In terms of the career side, the same, like, you know, make sure you have something to fall back on. So, but I learned that he could have been and actually wanted to be a musician. In fact, was an incredible singer. He, as a child, was winning these vocal competitions until his father just basically like scared him out of it. Like, and in fact, he always would narrate. It used to drive my mom crazy because like they would come to my concerts when I was a kid playing an orchestra, and my dad would insist on sitting in the back row. And the reason was that when he was a kid and performing in this competition, his father was in the front row, scowling at him. And that's when he lost. Like he kind of lost his cool in that moment, and then never did it again. Like literally abandoned it for the rest of his life. It was such a tragedy. Like he was a, and then the thing was that when, you know, at the end of his life, a friend of ours shared this moment of the two of them singing together, like that had been just from a year or two earlier. And I heard his voice in a way I'd never in my life known it to be. Like I spent 50 years not knowing that he was an artist, you know, like it was really, it actually, it shook me so deeply, you know. So that level of sacrifice is what we're talking about, actually. Anyway, just to say that, yes, so they came, my father, like your father, probably grew up before partition.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, so his father was a civil servant. And so that meant that they were stationed all over the subcontinent. They would move every 6 months to a different place. He'd be uprooted with this large family, have to learn another language, and like, so, and including in Lahore and Quetta, like they lived way up there in the hills of probably near your mom. And so he became a very adaptive person, but also one who was kind of done, like mentally just done in by it all. Like he feels like he never actually learned anything right. Like he was bad at math because he never really got a handle on it while things kept changing. He just remembers his childhood as complete chaos, essentially. It was a large family. There were all these many younger siblings that he kind of had to take care of. So his kind of youth was, and then the other thing was that part of what he experienced was being in Jesuit schools, and he never really talked about it, but I think he witnessed some abuse or something to the point where he just disavowed all religion, and in particular never called himself a Hindu. Whereas like other immediate family members, including his younger brother, became the most devout Hindu. Like it's really, this is the same, they grew up like side by side, you know. So the same circumstances can manifest in such different ways, you know. But what that meant for us, well, anyway, so he came to the US he was like some of you, he came to do a PhD in pharmaceutical chemistry at the University of Florida. And the way that happened, this is in 1962, the way that happened was that some of his colleagues they were already like working, he had a master's in India, they were already working at some pharmaceutical company, and then some of them saw that there was like new opportunities to go to the US, enter through these PhD tracks, you know. So they went ahead, so a couple of his friends from that company got into this PhD program at the University of Florida. And then they did, their advisor was so into them because they were good at stuff, you know. Like, wow, you guys are great. Any more back home like you? And they're like, well, I guess you could call Raghu. Yeah, let's get him. Why not? You know. But he really felt like he had really practical knowledge. But he didn't, the academic stuff he really struggled with. So that's how he came. And then my parents were already had an arranged marriage by then. My mother wanted to be a scientist, but her parents, or her father, let her pursue that because they thought it would make her less marriageable or whatever. She was married the day after her 19th birthday. My dad was 9 years older. And she was the one who was like, you should apply for this. You should go to the US, you know, like she was the instigator. He was like, I don't know. So then he went alone for a year, then was able to send for her on the visa, get her a visa. And yeah, so they were, and this is actually before the Immigration Act 65. So actually, they were very scarce. People like them were so rare in the US. It was like that was the beginning of the movement that led to the 1965 Immigration Act, which then made US immigration law slightly less racist, so that they let in a small number of very carefully curated non-Western immigrants who usually had that sort of scientific or technical training to help the US beat the Russians like that's 20 years ago. So we were this like curated population. So then we were finding each other, and they're all these similarities, like, oh, you're a scientist, I'm a doctor. And I remember like my dad, and it was really like this in the early 70s, there were these things called phone books. You probably seen such a weird thing. Literally everybody in your town had their phone landline listed in a book. And so he was looking for something in the phone book. He's like, Krishnan? That's an Indian name. Let's call him. And so he called this complete stranger. Hey, my name's Raghu. What are you doing? You know? And they became best friends for life. Like that family became our family's best friend. It was really like that. Like in the 70s, that's how it was. You like find another one, and you're like, you stick to them like glue. You know. But it helped also that they were from essentially similar communities. They were all Tamil. They were, you know, educated, caste privileged, you know, that they had all this stuff in common that made it easy. And so then, like, yeah, people like us were the first Asian Americans essentially really born to that wave. And that made it kind of weird to be who we were, but we had to sort of figure that out little by little. Yeah, now it's very different because there's millions of South Asian Americans, like, which is that was not the case back then. We were like maybe thousands, I don't know, not many.
It's hard for me to believe that we've come to the end of our hour here together. I just want to thank you again so much for participating in this. Thanks also to Shahzad. I know you stepped out for a moment. Thanks for hosting us and for being here. I hope you all have a really restful break.
And I hope you can come to the show. I think it's going to be pretty good. And it's something I really share. Like I said, we felt really fortunate to find each other and find that we could do this together. And it matters that we are who we are together. It matters that you are who you are together. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. We actually have